So, hi, Jude. We agreed we were going to have a conversation about psychological safety today. And so I thought we could start just by you describing what you understand by that term.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a really big term at the moment. A lot of people are talking about it, particularly in the online setting. And I think really particularly relevant now that we've all had to work online for quite a long period of time across the world. It can mean different things to different people. What I think is really important about it is that we are just aware of the impact it can have. My definition of psychological safety is that ability to feel comfortable and at ease in the online setting so that you're able to participate fully as a learner or a student and as a trainer or a coach to really kind of help people to achieve their best. What about you? What do you think, Shelley, about psychological
Well, I certainly
safety?
agree with you, but I also think that it's in a team with high psychological safety, the teammates feel really safe to risk their opinions and their ideas. You know, they're confident that nobody else on the team is going to embarrass them or punish them for admitting a mistake, for asking what they might think is a seemingly obvious question, or offering a new idea. On the contrary, they're going to feel that the team is inclusive and that their contributions are going to be seen as positive, constructive, and worthy of consideration. And so they feel really willing to put everything they're thinking, including their emotions, out there.
I think that's a really good point. And I think what is interesting about the use of this idea of psychological safety, the fact is that we have kind of got used to treating each other like a computer screen in the online setting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the start of when people started to work online. You know, we thought about webinars, big groups, and it was quite a passive experience. And now all that's changed and it's much more active and participatory. People are sort of feeling a bit more that they really want to be fully involved as people. So that that idea of sitting there looking at your computer and waiting to be told things no longer really has any appeal, or only in very limited ways. So, we all want to know how we can, as you just said, really engage fully. And I think that has to do, when you're thinking about a remote team leader maybe, or trainer, with knowing what people's preferences are. How do they like to communicate? Yeah. What do they find difficult? What challenges them? And also just to be aware of the human factor.
I'd like to add to that people were used to meeting in person and seeing the body language, the social cues. And when everybody had to switch over during the last year to meeting online, people became very uncomfortable with that and didn't feel safe anymore. So that sense of connectedness kind of disappeared. And now where we have people from different time zones and different cultures with differing expectations and norms, that only complicates things. So making people feel safe in the online environment tears down the barriers between these remote locations. So that's what we need to be working on, I think.
And one other idea that strikes me, again, thinking about team leaders working remotely and creating safety, is that, there's this idea that as team leaders, as managers working virtually, we tend to kind of, our strengths and our development points tend to become magnified. So, if we're great at, let's say influencing our team, then that comes across even more powerfully in the online setting. And, similarly with a weakness, maybe we're not so great at managing conflict, that can also become quite obvious online.
There is actual research going on this topic right now. And I think that one of the leaders in the field is Amy Edmondson from Harvard. And in fact, I believe she's the person who coined the term psychological safety. Because it's something that we all feel, but it's easier to talk about if we can give it a name. And, and that is the name, and it makes sense. And then when you say, we all need to develop our individual styles, I agree with that. And certainly it's most important for the person who's the facilitator, the leader of the meeting, but it's important for everybody else to be thinking about too. What can I be doing to encourage other people to feel comfortable in the meetings? Certainly, we want to, let's say, invite people to speak up with their questions, their concerns, their ideas, no matter how trivial they might seem, how unrelated even to a topic, because a lot of times people just come up with ideas and they're things that other people haven't thought about. And so that kind of behavior needs to be encouraged. What are some thoughts you have on that?
I do have a series of kind of tips I tend to use quite a lot.
Yeah.
From very basic practical things, Shelley, like, the way I design slides, I make sure that there's a very simple thing in a way, but there's an agenda at the beginning so people know
Of
what
course.
is the structure of this meeting or this training session. What are we going to be
Yeah.
doing? I think you sort of touched on this, the virtual etiquette part, or netiquette, so how am I expected to communicate? Do I use the chat tool? Do I use my voice aloud? Do I annotate a slide maybe, if possible? So there are different things. Just being clear on that really, really helps in a way that I think most people don't even anticipate how important it is to have that clarity. If people aren't keeping up with the technology, if perhaps there will always be someone who's a little bit behind everyone else, that can feel quite uncomfortable. Just to be clear, what to do if it doesn't work for you. And it's not an embarrassing thing. Simply come back to the main session window and have a chat with the trainer or the producer. I think those very simple kind of rules of play really help people in this setting, because it's so easy to get left behind. And those are kind of key things. I mean, sometimes if I really want to kind of make a session feel very structured, I might just use a logo or an icon on a slide to make clear what part of the session we're still in. That may seem a little bit over the top, but sometimes people just feel, well, I actually don't know where I am. You can feel quite lost in the online environment. So,
structure.
It can be all about structure for some.
Yeah.
Really.
And research has actually shown that a common practice among high-performing teams who encourage psychological safety is the first thing they do is develop group norms that create a sense of togetherness, because they develop them together, so that as part of being inclusive.
You mentioned Amy Edmondson, and I'm kind of interested in the ongoing research, like yourself. And there's a colleague of ours, in fact, who is developing a kind of approach for psychological safety in the online training session, which sort of mirrors Abraham Maslow's pyramid of psychological needs, but he's applying it to online training. And I think it's emerging as quite an interesting way to look at it. And just in summary, one of the points he makes is that psychological safety comes right down the bottom of that pyramid. So, we may start by learning the technology a little bit. The next piece is, kind of, what do I know? How do I do this? What's expected of me? All those things we just spoke about. So it's almost like unless you get that feeling, you get that atmosphere, it's pretty hard to progress and feel fully productive and confident. I think that's the point of, this particular approach.
I think another model that we could look at that makes sense in this regard is David Meister's trust equation. And I think, again, each person should consider this, but particularly the person who's leading the meeting, to encourage this sort of thing. And the idea is that part of this is all about building trust, and trustworthiness, in David Meister's thoughts, equals establishing credibility. So what makes you believable? Reliability. Do you walk the talk? And then creating intimacy. So it's about, what we talk about a lot of the time, the task versus the relationship building pieces, and that they're equally important. So intimacy means opening up to others, showing that you are vulnerable, because that's being a role model, encouraging others to do the same. And then also having thinking about a self-orientation. Is my self-orientation too focused on me, or am I practicing empathy towards others?
And you've made that sound very easy in what you just said.
Yeah.
But of course, it does require a lot of people. And I guess one final point maybe I would make is that in my experience, people approach these online sessions, whether they're training events or whether they're meetings, kind of as something where they feel a bit nervous of the technology, nervous about if they'll do it right, kind of thing, or as something that's not really serious. It's so easy to set up a session now and join it that we can feel, just do that, and haven't got to prepare very much.
Well, I think one of the things that you can do, or you can take advantage of the advantages in the online setting. So you can be using the benefits, the tools that are available to you in online interaction. So just very simple things like raising your hand, using the yes/no functions, that might be the green check or the red X, using polls, and you can have fun polls too to get people really involved. Clearly also using chat, breakout rooms, and all the other functions that are available to us, depending on which platform you're using. But that's, that is the really good side of online, because we have all those like quick tools available to us. Some of the other points I think we might be making that encourage psychological safety are things like we shouldn't be interrupting others. We should be trying to be inclusive and let everyone speak, including the people who don't speak so often, and not to end a meeting before everyone has spoken.
Well, I absolutely agree about your last point there about everyone needs to have spoken. In some groups, when we're working with a big group of 30 or 40, then it really is difficult to do that. But everyone needs to have had some kind of voice.
And as Amy Edmondson says, teams can be lonely places, and we don't want them to be that. So if we use the tools and the techniques that are available to us to encourage everybody to take part and feel safe, then we're going to have a healthy atmosphere where everybody is willing to contribute. And that's just so important.
I agree.